Hello and welcome to Unboxed, the podcast that dives deep into the world of custom packaging and innovative brand experiences. In each episode, we'll be exploring the latest trends, innovations, and best practices in the design and packing industry, and then taking a look at how they can help businesses like yours to create memorable and impactful brand experiences. I'm your host, Sam Johnston. Let's get started. I'm your host, Sam Johnston, and in this episode, we'll be talking to Michael Kauffman, who is the Executive Director of the Clio Music, Clio Cannabis programs at the prestigious Clio Awards, as well as a wealth of experience having worked across organizations like YouTube, Google, just to name a few. It's great to have you here, Mike.
Hey, it's nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no, we're really looking forward to it. And for the listeners, we're going to break this into 5 key questions just so that we'll chapter it so you can skip if you want to listen to different people speaking on the same topics. But we are super excited on this because we have a relationship here with the Clio Awards, which is that for the 2023 Clio Awards, we're going to be able to not just see all the designs and categories, which we're always excited about, but also our own Chief Design Officer at Merchant Boxes, Rick Fitzgerald, is actually one of the judges at the Clios this year. So we're very proud to be able to support the event and looking forward to what it has to come. But those...
Yeah, I would just add, Rick is an incredibly gifted designer. I've known him for a long time. It might be helpful just to give a quick snapshot on Clio. The Clio Awards have been going on since 1959, which is pretty amazing. It's a really cool legacy to be a part of, and really amplifying and recognizing creative work. Initially focused just on advertising. I mean, I think most people watch Mad Men. And, there's episodes where they go to the Clios. I think Don left his Clio in a bar in one episode. But then through the years, as we got closer to the present day, the company looked at different industries at where there was creative work happening and really focused on areas where we could amplify that creative work, sort of advertising and beyond, really marketing, design. We now have 6 programs, Clio. We have Clio Entertainment that focuses on TV and film. We have Clio Sports, just like it sounds, creative work in the sports field. We have Clio Health. And then Clio Music and Clio Cannabis are the 2 programs that I'm spearheading. Rick is on our jury, design and innovation jury for the Clio Cannabis program, which I'm really excited about. So that's kind of the broader snapshot. There are all these different programs, and and I think it's also relevant because you often find inspiration outside of your lane. I love to look at the winners in Clio Sports or, Clio Health, or it just gives you a different point of view, but you realize an incredible creative idea just cuts through the clutter, and really resonates regardless of what field it's in. So we'll probably come back to that because that's a reoccurring thing that I always try to encourage people to look across industries, to really dig deep into winners galleries on places like the Clio's award site. So yeah,
it's a huge source of inspiration. Well, to get us kind of kick-started into this, question 1 is, what inspired you to get into this industry and how did you get your start in the field?
Well, it's a great question. It makes it sound like there was a plan, that it was calculated, but I think as is the case with many people, I started at a place where I loved music. And I had moved to Chicago. I grew up on the East Coast, grew up near Philadelphia, went to Temple University in Philadelphia, got a degree in what was called radio, television, and film, which sounds a little antiquated now, but really communications, and moved to Chicago to work for some independent record labels, none of which are around anymore. And when I got there, basically, it was a challenging environment where there was no money. And I got a job as a copywriter at an ad agency. And I think that was, for me, kind of the first opening into this world of marketing, advertising, design, branding. It wasn't necessarily something I thought about, other than I love certain packages in music. I loved records, at the time. And so for me, I came in sort of in 2 directions. One, I worked as a copywriter on a typewriter. That sounds a long time ago too, but crafting ads for different clients. The Chicago White Sox was a client. Brown's Chicken was a regional chicken chain. And then missed music. And I do vividly remember sitting at my typewriter and listening to what was and still is one of, like, I think the most amazing radio stations in the United States, WXRT in Chicago, and hearing, might have been John Hyatt or some artist that was coming to town. And I remember thinking, man, I wish I was working in music again, because I could go to the show, or I'd have money for tickets, or somebody would give me a ticket. And as things progressed, I ended up getting a job at a music retail chain called Sound Warehouse, which is no longer around. It was bought by Blockbuster, and of course they went away. But that put me in a position where, being in a retail environment and thinking about the way you present things and display things, and what music you're going to put on an end cap and what that's going to look like, and that, I think, sort of got me in a path of really thinking about the visual elements of music. And subsequently through my career, I've worked at record companies. I worked at just a phenomenal historic jazz label called Verve, that's part of Universal. I was there for 10 years. Also, I think a label that is known for, in addition to, of course, the music and the artists, just quality of design. There's, I think, a lot of jazz labels like that. Blue Note, of course, being another, that the package design is just so memorable, and it builds the brand. I mean, you look at Blue Note covers, and you sort of are like, oh yes, those are Blue Note covers. And I think similarly with some of the early years of Verve. So that too, I think, set me on at least a path of being aware. I was never a designer. I worked with designers. We had phenomenal, creative officer, head of creative at Verve, named Hollis King. And, I think people like Hollis, people like Rick, people that do design, they always just have such an interesting take on things. And they always have the coolest stuff in their office. They have the coolest stuff on the walls. But they, I think, tend to be very gifted from having a good eye, but also just knowing what resonates and what's going to inspire. And I just think of many of the photo sessions when Hollis would come back from doing a session with Diana Krall or Clarence Gatemouth Brown or somebody, and he would have these photos, and that would just tell the story on sort of an equal way. The music that you would then be hearing for the first time would be telling when you were, kind of previewing a record. So I love sort of that connection, the visual interpretation of music and of artists and how they want to show themselves. And that, that has continued through to this day. When I ultimately ended up working at the Clios, I've been at the Clios going on now 6 years. A few years ago, when we all sort of went through that, what we're still, I feel like, going through this insane time with COVID, and we decided to focus on some content things at Clio because we have an editorial platform called Muse by Clio. And one of the ideas that we came up with, Tim Nutt, our editor at the time, we talked about doing something with album covers, and we developed a series called Art of the Album. And that has continued to this day. It's weekly, every other week kind of thing, but it's people sharing their roughly 10 favorite album covers from a design perspective. And it's one of my favorite things that we do because it just, you read these, and the language people use to explain why they love the look of something makes you want to listen to the record. And ultimately, if the best cases are when that art and when that branding connects with what is the music and what the artist wanted to do with the music and with the art. So I love that series. So if you haven't checked that out, just go onto the Muse site. You can click on the nav bar, find Art of the Album series, and you can just read through all of them. I think there's like 80 of them right now, and every one of them is unique. It's so interesting to hear how people think about design, and you would think it would maybe be all the same, like I was saying, Verve or Blue Note covers, and it's not. Everybody has a different take on what impacted them musically and from a design perspective. So, that's all been part of my story. My role at different companies has typically been either marketing or sales or commerce, or but I think ultimately you always are thinking about how do we package something, how do we make something attractive in a way that whoever we're trying to connect with is going to notice it, and I think that's something that's probably a thread through most jobs. You don't have to be a designer to have that, it doesn't have to be in your job description to have that as something that's important. So, that's kind of how I got to here, but it was sort of all over. So it wasn't like this planned thing. And I'm fortunate at the Clios that overseeing two really interesting industries in very different ways, but music and cannabis, there's certainly important visual things that are part of both those industries. And, and I love that. I love seeing that. I love seeing what people are doing. I think there's a unique creative energy that you need to have if you work in cannabis, because there's so many roadblocks and there's so many things that you can't maybe do that traditional branding and marketing, and every other CPG industry can do. So I love seeing what gets submitted. Once again, I'll say if you do nothing else from this conversation, go and look at winners in the Clio programs. It's easy. You go to clios.com. You'll see all the different programs, music, entertainment, sports, cannabis, and just going to, it's a rabbit hole. You get in that rabbit hole and you can search by the different mediums. So you can search for design, or you can search for whatever, social media or whatever it might be. And I think that the thing that is so evident to me that I've seen time and time again is the power of a creative idea, and a creative idea can truly change minds, more than probably an argument. It's doing something creatively just can make people sit back or rethink or, see something in a different light. And that, I love to see that. You don't get it all the time, but when you do, it just, it hits you. It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thanks for giving us the background there. I think it's such an interesting journey to get to where you are, but it brings a breadth of understanding from different industries, from different spheres, to bring that to the Clios, which is really exciting. And you did touch on within that conversation, like some of the elements of packaging design, artwork that contribute to that unique brand experience that's able to be put into the consumer's hands. And I think that you did also touch on some of the strategies. So I think we've jumped ahead here. I think maybe two of the questions.
We can just keep talking about them.
And I think that, do you have any specific examples here? So could you share any success stories or case studies maybe of businesses that have transformed their brand through their design work?
Well, let me tackle it a little differently. There's a couple examples that come to mind of, ways that I think were effective in achieving a goal, in packaging, achieving a goal. And I would say that I think it's critical to also state at the beginning of any of this that it starts with a quality product or service. If you don't have that, you can maybe trick somebody and do some amazing creative work or design work and convince them to try something. But it truly, and I think that's every industry, in cannabis, it certainly is the quality of the flower that is important to a large majority of the consumer base. Music as well. You have to love the record, or else you end up with a cover that becomes one of your 10 favorite design covers, but you hate the album. But so I think it has to start there. But there's been some interesting stuff, and I will kind of focus on things that I've seen recently, because doing music and cannabis, there's examples of things that come to mind. But there's certainly many, 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 if you go to the Clio site and you look, like I said, in any of the other programs. But, I think that there was something that won a grand Clio in the cannabis program last year that also was awarded. It was submitted and awarded in the main Clio program. It won a gold Clio by an agency out of Germany, Service Plan, that worked with a brand, Arroyo, that their, I think, intent was to educate people about the reality in the cannabis space, that there's so many people that are still in prison, that were put in prison, for nonviolent, just low-level cannabis offenses. And at a time when, obviously legalization is kind of sweeping the land, I'll say, in some ways. And it just is an area that is really important, that is addressed, that we figure out how to help people realize this and act upon it, and lean on their Congress people, and lean on our legislature to like adjust this stuff and fix it. And so I think what was interesting, Service Plan and Arroyo did a package design. It's called Freedom Grams, that they basically enabled the stories to be told of different people that had been incarcerated for very small amounts. And so the design incorporates the amount that this particular person might have, been incarcerated for, and using design on the packaging that would then take you through, AR or a QR code or whatever it might be. It would tell you the particular story of certain people, and then also give you actionable ways to help, to reach out, to write letters, and I think that was such an interesting way to use the packaging and the branding to do something that was important to the company and is important, I think, to the industry and the space. I think they also made the decision to allow anybody to use the packaging and elements of the packaging, which I think is also a brilliant design decision, and giving the tools to people to also help tell the story using different elements of the design. I think that was something that resonated with me. I love that. I love the stories behind all the work that gets submitted, that gets acknowledged by the jury in Clio programs. The juries, people like Rick will be on a jury that they completely determine what wins. There's a variety of rounds that they go through, ways that they look at the work, but really it's all through the lens of creativity. It's not about ROI or results per se. It's about the creative idea. Is it bold? Is it innovative? Does it move the industry forward? And and I think that's unique, because it can be a small brand, it can be a dispensary, it can be a local musician that comes up with a great idea and does something. And if it's a great idea, it has a shot at winning a Clio. A jury looks at that and says, what a brilliant, bold idea. And so I love to see kind of the stuff that comes in, works through the process. But as far as another example that we're just talking about, sort of the packaging and effectively, sort of doing something unique, I think is, most people have heard of Third Man Records and Jack White. They have a store and a big, I think they have a venue and whatnot down in Nashville. They also have, I think, a production facility in Detroit. But they did something that won a Clio in the music program the last cycle that is so simple yet is so freaking brilliant that it just comes to mind. They basically have, over the course of I'm trying to remember if it was like 2013 or 2012. It's over the course of 10 years or so. They have done a variety of releases with Jack, and they basically made all the covers so that over the course of time, you actually can put all these covers together and create a whole new image that works together. That's so awesome. Each cover works individually, and then collectively they create this image, which, what a Genius. Brilliant, simple idea that was like having the foresight to do that like 12 years ago or whatever it was, and like keep doing it. Mm-hmm. Those are the kind of ideas that I think it's just good for people to see if you're trying to figure out how to do any of this. Certainly working with people that are gifted and skilled at it, like Rick and the team that you guys have, is important. But I think seeing ideas that work and resonate with you can just be really inspirational, give you ideas of how, you can address things. But I think those are two things that come to mind. There's awesome, certainly, there's so many buckets here too, because there's literal, physical package design. There's also just, the storytelling and the content that, you can develop to tell those stories. That's sort of an extension of that. All that stuff is just, just super critical now. It's like you need to develop that community with your audience, and and that I think is one of the biggest challenges. It's like really trying to figure out what that true story is to who you are as a company, as a brand, as a group of people. Is kind of, you have to do it, and when you see these things that do get recognized, you see companies that have thought through that in a way. So I think all that is
that's great. Yeah, I think there's some gold there for anyone that's listening. And there'll be some listeners here that are small businesses just getting started off, and then there'll be some other people that are maybe much further down in their career, and they're just getting understanding of what's happening in the industry in a different context. And I think that you touched on something there within connected packaging, and connected packaging can mean lots of things to lots of people, but generally it's about how do we provide additional storytelling, additional communication, how do we reach through the packaging, through the design to provide an added value experience. And that's in a lot of conversation at the moment, but looking maybe future ahead. So it's very hard to forecast, but if we were to look 5 to 10 years in the future, where do you see custom package design? How do you see it evolving? And what could businesses be doing today, at the very least, to stay ahead of the curve moving forward?
That's a great question. And if I was confident in the answer, I would figure out a way to make some money on it. I think we've seen such an acceleration of change happening recently. Obviously an area like AI is just such a massively impactful area that it's tough to really forecast what that is really going to mean in a year, let alone 5 or 10. But I do think that there's going to be continued innovation in there's sort of two areas that I think are important as it relates to brands and packaging. It's extreme customization is kind of how I would define it, and then just really extremely high touch, remarkable experiences. I think those things will keep happening regardless of all this other swirl.
Yeah,
it's like you want the ability to literally have a package that is made for you, that is from design, from maybe the way the package or the product is adjusted a little bit or whatever. I think that we're at the tip of the iceberg of that. I think everything, in cannabis, there is such a need for education. I think everybody in cannabis should be focused on how do we educate people to better understand the plant? How do we continue to push for more research so we can understand the plant and all the different aspects of the terpenes and cannabinoids? And I think that will get to a place where you and I can say, right now it's like, oh, I want a sleep gummy. But you know what gummy will work for you may not work for me. And I think we're at the beginning of a place where there's going to be this extreme customization where it'll be literally the Michael Kauffman sleep gummy, or or whoever it might be. I think that is something that we'll see in our lifetime. We'll see the ability of science to kind of be on the front end of helping deliver extremely customized products for people that work with their physiological makeup and that sort of thing. And I think the second area that I mentioned was just this need for high touch, as everything becomes completely virtual in the cloud, wherever all that leads, the human need for touch just feels like that will become even more important. And in 5, 10 years, whatever it is, I think we'll probably still see box sets, vinyl box sets being sold. I think that there's still that immersive experience that's high touch, that you want that pleasure of opening, and I know you can do this virtually, but I think there's something to the touch and feel and the ink and the paper stock and and the typography and the raised lettering and stuff that ultimately will become so much even more meaningful when it's not everywhere. I think those two areas are really important. And I know you asked the second part of it is like, where can we go? What can companies do today? And I think that just having some folks that are discovering and investigating what can be done with things like AI, you certainly should have somebody that's that has their foot in the pool or their toe in the pool, and I think that's a matter of leadership, having a sense of who you are as a company, and not just like jumping into the next shiny thing, but also having people to try things. Is some of this going to help us with like quality control? Is some of this going to really help certain aspects of our business in a way that it doesn't mean that we're going to lose all these jobs? It means maybe we'll shift these things. And I think that just starts from a leadership point of view of just investigating what all this means, trying different things. I mean, certainly, once again, getting back to looking at stuff that wins in the Clios, I think you're going to see things that people are trying, and sometimes they work. I mean, what, the Freedom Grams folks did, it might not be right for every brand, but it's really interesting to think about, can we do something that really helps move the conversation forward as it relates to an important social issue? Is that connected to who we are? And that, always just comes down to leadership and trying to determine, what that looks like for your company. So that's maybe like not a great answer, but I think it's still, how does leadership think about innovating and trying things? And, I think that's unfortunately hard to do. We all get overwhelmed, and but I think that's where good leaders step in and help lead the team. So
I think there's some gold there, and I think that's probably it for this episode. But I would love, maybe after these Clios, maybe if we bring Rick on and we can get maybe yourself or someone else from the team to come on and talk about what happened in this Clio and what's some of the inspiration we can take from that. That'll be super actionable then, to look at what happened, what's moving, what things have gone on, and then how can businesses apply some of those principles into their packages, if you're up for that.
Yeah, I would love that. The Cannabis program will be announcing winners in the fall. The music program, we're going to be doing the show early next year in Los Angeles during Grammy week. Sports has a Clio Sports program later this year. We have our Clio Health Awards coming up soon. I think all that is interesting to look at, even just drilling down to the design winners or the branded content entertainment winners. There's themes and threads that will come out of that. So I'd be glad to do that, and with 100%. Rick and or others.
No, we'd love that. And what's the best way for people to follow the Clios? Is to go onto the websites to be able to look at the winners, but how can they engage with it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Just Clios.com has all the different programs. So you can, on the nav bar, go into any of them. And then if you go down on the homepage, you can sign up for specific newsletters. And then, of course, at Clio Awards is the social channels on most of the social networks that we have accounts, and I'm LinkedIn is great for me, Michael Kauffman. I'm Michael Joel on Twitter and Instagram, which is my middle name. It was my radio name back in the day when I was a DJ. So
awesome. Well, we'll put those links into the show notes as well, so the people don't have to go searching. We'll navigate you to the right places pretty quickly. And if you listening have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, or for Michael, you can reach us at unboxed@merchantboxes.com. And until next time, keep thinking outside the box, creating unforgettable brand experiences, and we'll see you soon. Have a good one. Bye. Thank you for listening to today's episode. It was sponsored by Merchant Boxes. Merchant Boxes provide custom packaging to large businesses and small creators that customers love. If you're looking for award-winning custom package designs that make your business and products stand out from the competition, click the link in the show notes to find out more.